So when I look at this situation, if you're any of the babes that's like, oh, I would have been on this babe side as opposed to the work wife, I feel like you're overrating the value of sex in a man. And just the same way you would want a man to bring you flowers to the office instead of coming to eat you out every day, I do think that...
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breaktime Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who will include running his mouth to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B, and I am here to discuss bullshit. Okay, not necessarily bullshit, online bullshit. Okay, now that I've kind of described it like that, it kind of makes it sound like you're listening to this episode for the sake of just listening to garbage, and that's not really the case. Truth of it is, I do want to discuss some of the lies that have been put out on the internet in relation to love, sex, and relationships to some degree, but also at least try to clear up some of the fakeness that we do experience online, which may be influencing how some of us are looking at relationships in real life. Or, even worse still, adjusting our preferences and making it such that we are cutting ourselves out from some of these very amazing experiences that we could have in relationships simply because we chose to listen to some bullshit online. And I do intend on doing that with two particular cases. I have one thing that I want to rant about. I've got a main topic regarding someone questioning if social media has ruined dating, and I do intend on getting to the bottom of this. And I'm hoping that by the time I get to the end, you will be agreeing with me. But then again, should you agree with me? Should you not agree with me? Should you have a different form of feedback? Or should you want to suggest a potential topic and or guest that I should have on the podcast? Then the DMs are always open and the social media links are usually in the description. And should you feel like that might be too much work for you to do, you can always listen all the way till the end because I always mention my social media there. Or at least the social media handles that you can contact me on there. But all in all, I do thank you so much for listening, and I do hope that you listen all the way till the end of the episode, as well as the other episodes as well, because, who didn't mind that? But anyways, all the pleasantries aside, I do need to get to the meat of this episode, which involves me handling online bullshit. But before I can get into the main bit that I had specifically prepped on, the main topic and all, I want to start things off by talking about the idea of the work wife. Now, I stumbled across a particularly interesting post not too long ago where a lady spoke about how she went to visit her husband in the office, and apparently his work wife had made brownies for him, of which she took the brownies and she was eating them. And apparently, there's that whole 1952 era of relationships that she doesn't entirely believe in. And, the people in the comments weren't all that nice to her, even though this is something that normally you'd expect a bunch of women to kind of jump to the woman's side for, because they're all about being a girl's girl. So I want to let the clip play, then I can give my thoughts on it, because I feel like this situation, unlike many others, might be a little bit different in one of two ways. And I'm gonna discuss more of the one, then I'm gonna get to the two. But before I can do any of that, let me just let the clip play. So without further ado...
Well, I just got back from a fun trip to my man's office where I found out he has a work wife. When I got there was a plate of these brownies in the common room, and I said, "Oh my God, who made these? These are delicious." And he said, "Oh, my work wife." Come again? Not only have I never heard of such a person, but how long has this been going on? I don't like these jokes. I'm not into these kind of jokes. I'm not the kind of person who has a hall pass in a relationship. I don't do hall passes, work wives, work husbands. No, I don't do that. So in she trots and looks at me and said, "Oh, hi. I've heard so much about you. How do you like the brownies I brought today?" Unfortunately, bitch, they're delicious. You, on the other hand, deserve a... So I get introduced to Sylvia. Sylvia's been there for about 2 weeks. She's become very close to my man, who is her boss, and is now claiming to be his work wife. And he's in on the joke. He's in on it and has no shame whatsoever. Then Sylvia proceeds to tell me that, "Oh, I made the brownies and brought them in because I noticed that he doesn't ever come with a packed lunch." I'm sorry, is it 1952? I have a job myself. I have things to do myself. I don't pack his lunch. If he wants to get a lunch, he can make his own lunch or he can buy his own lunch. What I do is I'm the kind of wifey that comes to the office mid-afternoon after popping 2 spicy cubes. And since he's the boss, shut the door and close the blinds and do the damn thing. That's the kind of wifey I am. Sylvia. Anyway, this whole chat got me a little out of the mood. So I turned around, I drove home, and here we are. He doesn't quite understand why I'm pissed and why we didn't do our full spicy afternoon, but he's going to find out as soon as he gets home. And I think he should probably fire her, if I'm honest. I don't think I'm overreacting, but my friend told me I was overreacting. Do you think I'm overreacting?
Okay. Particularly interesting situation there. It's not too uncommon, actually. The whole having a work wife or having a work husband that, you do stuff with or for. I think the only part where it becomes an issue is when you suddenly or when you progressively get closer with your work wife or husband to the point where it starts to make your partner uncomfortable. But anyways, that's a discussion for a different time, I think. Now, this lady did talk about this entire situation, and honestly, I'm gonna just say it right off the bat. I think this story is bullshit. Actually, I'll even correct myself. I know this story is bullshit, and I will explain why in a bit. Now, before I can get into my thoughts on this entire thing, let me just do the comments real quick, because I feel like the comments were actually quite entertaining. So, one of the first comments that I found said, and I quote, "Sylvia has a job too, but she had time to make him brownies." End quote. And this is one of those things that actually did tick this woman off to the point where she did another video where she was basically trying to explain herself and some shit, busy talking about, she was the one who had the spicy cubes, of which the spicy cubes are supposedly like cubes that are like an aphrodisiac. And you take them 30 minutes before if you're a babe, and they make you super horny and shit. I don't know. Anyways, she sells them shits. So I guess that's what she's been trying to do with this entire thing. And I'll also explain why I think that's the case at the end. Then the next comment says, and I quote, "This whole video you could have made 13 sandwiches." End quote. And honestly, this is one of the more interesting bits where these are two guys who actually decided to comment on this, and they're like, you know what, if you seem to have so much of a problem with Sylvia, then make your nigga the food. And that's a very valid thing. Now, I'm gonna read one last comment which says, and I quote, "Perfect example of women forgetting that yes, we are in 2026, but it's still fun to partake in classic feminine ways to take care of a man. Just like us women like to have certain old school standards with men being gentlemen. Nurturing your man with food and other love languages that are traditionally feminine, they aren't inherently bad. Today is just a way to give back to him. I like to feel protected by a man. Why can't a man enjoy what it's like to have feminine nurturing?" End quote. And this is actually a very interesting comment, not just because of what she said, but also the fact that this was a woman who was commenting this, not a man. This is a woman who is commenting this. You straight up could have also made him a sandwich, could have also made him lunch, but you're like, you know what, I also have a job, so I can't do that. And here's the thing. I think the one biggest point that I find to be particularly odd, that I don't know if anyone in the comments, I'm guessing probably someone in the comments actually mentioned this, is how is it that you have the time to go to his office and spend time with him, but you do not have time to make him a sandwich or two? That shit is baffling to me. Fine, maybe she has a job and she doesn't work from the house, but how hard is it to make a sandwich or even to grab him something for lunch and take it to his workplace if you're going to see him anyways? You just took spicy cubes so that you could go and get laid. And this behavior kind of goes back to the discussion that I had on the episode where I had the whole Corinne Steffens interview, where she was saying that men should marry the hoe because the hoe will suck you off, will give it to you, as many times in a day. And, that's such a great thing and men always want that. The point that I was trying to make is, yes, guys would love that. There's a ton of guys that would love something like that. But at the very same time, that's not the only thing that men want. it's not like it would really be the best thing as far as whatever trade-offs it would come with, because those trade-offs are the ones that make us not want to marry the hoe. So when I look at this situation as well, where she's like, oh, she's having beef with the work wife because, the work wife made brownies for dude, fine, I can get how it can make you a little bit uncomfortable, but sure, you could have done shit for the dude as well. And if this story wasn't so fake, I'd probably have come out and said that this is one of those instances where you can genuinely say that sex is overrated. So when I look at this situation, if you're any of the babes that's like, oh, I would have been on this babe side as opposed to the work wife, I feel like you're overrating the value of sex in a man. And just the same way you would want a man to bring you flowers to the office instead of coming to eat you out every day, I do think that any man would prefer being brought for lunch as opposed to his babe coming to either suck him or fuck him during lunchtime. But anyways, that aside, the reason why I was saying that this story is fake is because, one, the whole story with Sylvia being 2 weeks in and being considered a work wife is a stretch. Guys don't make work wives that fast. Women don't make work partners that fast. So that is just straight up bullshit, especially if the man is the boss, or it's a situation where this guy is going to shag the woman and people already know that it's going to happen. Because this wouldn't have become an office joke. Like, this would have been a straight up, oh, these guys are getting close type of shit in the office. And I know that because I'm in an office where a lot of this shit does happen on a day-to-day. But then now, the other thing is, so this lady's name on IG is Meg's Spice. Now, I decided to look at her profile before I started recording because I was ready to talk my shit about this. And when I looked through a lot of it, I realized that she has stories, and these are stories that are spaced like days, weeks, at most maybe like a month or two apart, where she's talking about her boyfriend, where she's talking about her husband, where she's talking about her fiance, and she's talking about shagging the Amazon driver. And at that point, I just checked out the link. She's selling the spicy cubes. So this entire thing is about the spicy cubes, not even about this entire situation. So the story was just another way to sell the spicy cubes, which she seems to be selling online. And I guess it probably reached its intended audience to some degree. That said, this is another version of bullshit stories, so I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of this episode. And this is actually something that was brought up from a point of concern by someone on Reddit, where they were basically asking if social media has made dating harder than it needs to be. Now, I want to read the post and get into my thoughts on it. So it says, and I quote, "One thing I've noticed about modern dating is how much outside noise has entered the conversation. Everywhere you turn, there's someone telling people how to date, how to behave, what a quote-unquote high-value man is, what a quote-unquote high-value woman is, what standards you should have, what red flags to avoid, and what rules to follow. And slowly, dating has started to feel less like two people getting to know each other and more like an interview where everyone is trying to figure out if the other person meets a checklist they found online. The strange part is that a lot of this advice comes from people who are also figuring life out in real time. Everyone has experiences, opinions, and lessons, but that doesn't automatically make someone an expert on relationships. Sometimes I think we've taken useful advice and turned it into rigid rules. Instead of asking, who is this person, how do we treat each other, can we build something together, you find that people are asking, does this person fit the criteria I was told to look for? Maybe the biggest problem with modern dating is that we've allowed strangers on the internet to become the third person in every relationship. Take advice, learn from others, but don't forget that every relationship is two unique people trying to figure each other out. What do you think? Has social media improved dating by giving people more awareness, or has it made it harder by creating unrealistic expectations?" End quote. Okay. Interesting post, and I do have some thoughts about it, but before I can get into any of those, I want to get into the comments real quick, then I give my thoughts on it. So the very first comment that I found said, and I quote, "The world is now living in a Black Mirror scenario courtesy of endless scrolling tech with the most polarizing shit. The world is now a dystopia, that's why everyone has been saying the world changed after COVID. Well, what happened since then is a surge of social media uptake and the relevant tech released by those firms, then AI, which just created originality in humans. Earth is currently hell, there's no hell after this is the real hell, cabron." End quote. Okay, personal thoughts, there are some bits that you can say are true, like the whole Black Mirror thing. I feel like Black Mirror, the series, like really put us onto some of the things that do seem very dystopian but have started seeming a little bit more real today. But personally, I feel like this comment is either very cynic or just very pessimist, not just because of what is being said, but by the fact that it just basically speaks doom and doesn't offer any real solutions. It's just, oh, you know, shit is bad now. Shit is like Black Mirror. The world has turned into hell. And after saying all of this, you haven't given any solutions. You haven't said anything regarding the entire topic of dating that is particularly worth improving or in a positive light. So this one just seems negative. Like, dude just sounds absolutely fucking bitter. But anyways, let me leave it at that and move it on to the next comment, which says, and I quote, "The illusion of choice, the endless improvements and enhancements of our physical appearance magnifies our differences. Because apart from being well groomed, most of it is just down to genes, health, resources, plus the lifestyle options available to us as a result of these." End quote. And I'd say that this is probably the biggest flaw that social media has had. And I'll say this is mainly Instagram, because the illusion of choice and the enhancements of physical appearance that a lot of these apps, say Instagram, Snapchat, you could say TikTok to some degree, have kind of brought in, have made it seem as though a lot of the unattainable people, a lot of the unattainable bodies, unattainable lifestyles and wealth are very attainable because we can see them happen, and we're seeing it with people that we feel are not too far from us, whether you're looking at it in terms of age, whether you're looking at it in terms of experience and so on. So it is very easy to assume that you can always get better. And if you're someone that's always looking for the better in the next person, then you'll be looking for a very long time. Which is why I personally think that this whole illusion bit is probably one of the main reasons why social media is a problem as far as dating and relationships are concerned. But anyways, with that said, let me move on to the next comment, which says, and I quote, "If you're a young man in your early 20s, just look for someone that likes you for you. Don't act like a provider, otherwise you'll get used up badly." End quote. Okay, this is fairly straightforward information. I don't think it is particularly in line with the topic that's being discussed as such, but for the most part, I do agree with it. If you're a young guy in your 20s, more so in university, y'all are broke. You don't need to act like a provider. And if anything, if you are trying to lock down someone who's good for the long haul, this is probably one of the best things that you can actually implement. Because if you're a young guy, like most babes, it's not like most babes are that dumb that they look at a guy and be like, if he can't pay for shit, I can't be with him. Like, if she genuinely does want to be with you, that shit isn't going to be that big of a problem. Trust me. Like, I've seen that shit in real time. Babe's always gonna be like, oh, I want a guy that'll pay for this and that. But the truth of the matter is, if you're a guy in your early 20s and a baby's expecting you to cater for bills or to be paying for shit, then there's a pretty good chance that either you put yourself in the position where you made it seem like that, or she doesn't really like you, she just wants you to pay for shit. Because not unless if you look like you're from money, most babes know for a fact that you don't have money like that, and they will more often than not, if they really want to be with you, find a way to make it work, because they know for a fact it's not like you're supposed to be handling bills when you're still in university, and like 90% of the time you probably don't have a job. But anyways, let me move on to the last comment that I had, then I'll get into my thoughts on it. And it says, and I quote, "Yeah, and it's a shame because social media could actually be such a positive influence for dating. There are positive couples and people who give healthy, practical relationship advice, but by and large, I feel like the negative unfortunately outweighs the positive." End quote. And I totally agree with this. I feel like the earlier stages of social media had so many positive relationship stories that were coming around. Like, people were hitting on each other on social media, people were meeting new people on social media, and it was such a great thing. And I remember how in the early to mid 2010s, like, there were stories of people meeting the love of their lives, meeting their potential partner or the partner that they end up marrying from social media. Like, I remember how maybe it was like early to mid 2010s, there were guys that I knew from the church that I was going to at the time who basically met on social media, went out on dates, and got married. And they credited their entire interaction and them being together to social media because they met on Facebook. And it was such an interesting story that it was featured on the news sometime around that time. And the truth of it is, like, I look at situations like that and I'm like, this is what social media should have been for. This is what dating apps should have been all about. But you look at it now and most of it is a lot of toxic shit. Especially when it comes to dating and relationships, a lot of it is usually just very toxic shit. But anyways, with all of that said, let me put the comments down and get into my thoughts on it. Now, I'm going to be very honest. This is going to sound like I'm speaking against my own interests as a podcaster and as a guy who talks about love, sex, and relationships on the internet. But honestly, I agree with dude. There is a lot of so-called advice, so-called rules, red flag this, don't do this with that, out here on the internet that is really, really messing up relationships today. Like, the dating experience has gotten to a point where it is so fine-tuned and so feature-rich that people are basically checking other people off on a checklist as opposed to getting to know the person as it goes by. Because it's like, oh, I meet this person, they don't do A, B, or C. Oh, that's a red flag. I'm dropping them. They ghost this person. They move on to someone else. They go out on 1 or 2 dates. They're like, I'm not really feeling it. And I think it's because of this, and this. Someone else comes up with a video. Oh, if your partner is doing A, B, or C, then you should leave them. Or if your partner is doing A, B, or C, then they're not good or it's a red flag. Suddenly it's like, oh, once I saw that video, I knew that I didn't like them for a reason. And just like that, someone's getting ghosted. And I've seen so many instances like that. I've read so many stories like that I get to a point sometimes where I feel like I think people are looking to the internet and to online personalities as the end-all be-all as far as dating is concerned, and a lot of them might be getting misled. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of the advice that does get pushed out can be true, but I do feel like sometimes people treat that advice like it's law and not necessarily advice or opinion. And the worst part about it, like this guy said in his post, is the fact that a lot of these people aren't even in like happy, stable relationships per se. Some of these guys, actually a ton of these people you're finding either were married and are divorced, sometimes even multiple times. You're finding it's someone who's never been in a relationship. It's someone who probably hasn't retained someone for a particularly long amount of time. And you find that a lot of that now means that they're giving you advice that they themselves haven't had too much practice on, and they don't have any actual proof that they're that great of a partner to actually give advice. And I wouldn't even try and throw myself out of this one and be like, oh, I'm better. No, I'm one of those people, which is why I was saying that this is going to sound like I'm basically like acting against myself. It's not like I'm married and I've got kids and I've had great relationships all the time. I've had a lot of shitty ones. It's not like I'm married, it's not like I am the absolute best human being, which is why, at least from my point of view, I try to at least tell you things as I see it, not so that you should take it as like the end all be all, but so that you can at least question your mindset on some of the things that you may consider are good or are bad. And a very clear example of this was the previous episode where a guy was busy talking about how he sees a lot of his peers, of which he's in his early 20s, as, like having low self-esteem, considering that they go above and beyond for some of these babes who don't even seem like they like them, but they do still end up bagging these women. And the thing was, I said that wouldn't be a great strategy for some of us to implement, and I said that I wouldn't do that. But I also went ahead and mentioned that it is a strategy and it has worked for a lot of guys. And if it's something that works for you, then fine, go along with it. But personally, I wouldn't want to employ that strategy just because, I'm me and I have a certain set of rules and parameters that I would probably want to stick to. But I wouldn't want someone to basically take what I said and be like, oh, that's simp behavior and you shouldn't simp, blah, blah, blah. Like, we talk a lot of shit about simps here and there, but trust me, like, there's a ton of simps out here that have bagged the babe that they wanted. And you can tell them that, oh, you know, you're a simp, your babe doesn't respect you. But for them, the thing that was the most important bit for them is bagging the babe. Maybe they didn't even care that much about the respect, you know. There's guys out here that are perfectly okay with being a simp and maybe even being a cuckold because that's something that they've been particularly okay with. So to say that whatever it is that us content creators and us people that basically talk about dating and relationships online is supposed to be the end all be all is very misleading, because you assume that just because we've told it to you and it sounds right, that it is how you should be doing your life and how you should be approaching your relationships. And the truth of it is, it isn't. At least it won't be for everyone. For some people it works differently, for others it doesn't. Like, there's so many different viewpoints whenever it comes to dating that sometimes you find that you having an opposite viewpoint actually works for you because of how you are and how you've grown up and the kind of environment and the kind of personality you have. It's kind of the same way. I'm a guy that doesn't mind, you know, either gender basically shooting their shot. There's men out here that would not for the life of them be comfortable with a woman shooting their shot at them, and they believe that they're the ones who are supposed to be shooting the shot. Women are also out there who also believe that they should never shoot their shot at a man. That's a man's job. And then there's me. Does it mean that either of us is wrong or right? No, we just have different viewpoints. And honestly, maybe if we just preached more of preferences instead of, oh, you know, the best choice and you should be doing this and that and this and that, then I guess maybe the space would have been better. Granted, of course, there's a lot of negativity online and that's what sells a lot of shit, but I feel like we need to preach a more positive message as far as dating and relationships is concerned, because if anything, it's one of the topics online that is actually getting more and more negative by the day, and we really need to turn it around. Otherwise, we are affecting people negatively in the real life. And with all that said, I will conclude by saying that whatever it is that we say online, as content creators, as people who talk about dating and relationships, whatever it is that we say online, please just take it as a suggestion and not the rule. If it doesn't work for you, trust me, it doesn't have to work for you. And if it doesn't work for you, by the way, that's okay. If it does, that's also okay. But either way, don't take whatever it is that we say as the rule of law. Go out there, explore relationships, try out dating. If it's getting your heart broken, you can probably heal from it to some degree. And if anything, you learn a little bit more about yourself and also about what it is that you want and what it is that you can take or not take. But either way, maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe I've been looking at things badly, and maybe I've been a part of the negative influence as far as dating and relationships is concerned. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at bagak_the_d. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.